welcome to the Pernick Cyber Podcast, where we discuss trending topics in cybersecurity. I am your host, Felix Jimenez, and I appreciate you stopping by for today's episode. So, today I want to talk about how much information you are making publicly accessible. But before we get into that, right, the goal of the Pernick Cyber Podcast is to be able to arm you with information. And I want to give you guys, some insight into some of the terms that are used in cybersecurity, right? So that if I, slip up and use these terms, you'll know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. So previously we've discussed what CVEs are, right? Common vulnerabilities and exposures. And we've talked about phishing with a PH. Today, I want to talk about spyware and what it is. So I'll read you the definition of what spyware is. Spyware is software that enables a user to obtain covert information about another user's computer activities and transmitting the data covertly from their drives, right? That's spyware. In other words, someone deposits software onto your machine, and we're going to talk about how that software gets deposited on your machine in a minute. But they put that software on your machine, right, and they get a lot of information, and they transmit it back to them so that they can take their time parsing through all of that information. I also want to talk about malware. So malware is software intentionally designed to cause damage to a computer, server, client, or computer networks. Most of you are aware of what malware is because it is in your face. If you have a Windows machine and your computer gets infected with malware, you get a bunch of pop-ups, or you open up your web browser and where you used to have Google, it'll redirect you to another site, right? That's malware that gets installed on your machine. Now, how does either spyware or malware get installed on your machine? Well, I've got some bad news for you guys. Using publicly accessible Wi-Fi is one of the mediums where you can actually get spyware and malware installed on your machine. But, Felix, how? Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. When you're at the airport, right, the reason why they give the Wi-Fi for free is because they tend to want to track you and read information from your machine to be able to target ads that are very specific to the things that you like. Now, that is what the airline would do. The nefarious actors are looking to steal your information. So usually those particular networks, they tend to not put any security around them. So the bad actors can actually sit on that Wi-Fi network and do nefarious activities, right? Which is installing spyware or malware on your machine, right, to do you harm. It's not just at the airport. When you go to Starbucks, these networks are not secured. They are intended for guest access, and usually when you put guest access, it is unfiltered, right? It is unfettered access to the internet, which also means that the bad guys can sit on that network and do harm or do recognizance to do harm. So I want you to be mindful to not use public Wi-Fis. I know they also have them, in New York City, they have them on the streets where they have these kiosks that have Wi-Fi available and things to be able to charge your phones, right? Just if I can urge you to please not use a public Wi-Fi. If you want, today's phones, nowadays, you can actually tether your phone, right, to your laptop and get on the internet in a more secured manner, right? Because you control the Wi-Fi password to be able to get on your cell phone. It doesn't have to be Apple, it's Android, whomever it is. They have the ability for you to be able to tether. Start using that feature versus a public Wi-Fi. Now let's get to the topic that I actually wanted to talk about today, which is how much information you're putting out, to the public, that the public can see. Well, the reason why I want to talk about this is because sometimes you do it, innocently, where you don't realize that you are giving someone who's looking to do you harm a lot of information. We're going to start by something that seems innocuous, something that looks, simple enough, but it gives information about you and about your family. Those little stickers that you put on the back windshield, Unfortunately, that conveys information. That conveys how many people are in your family, right? So they'll see, okay, it's mom, it's dad, is Spot the dog, and Felix the cat, all part of that family. Now, we move on to social media, right? And it doesn't have to be any particular platform. All of the platforms, you have to make sure that you go through the security settings of each and every one of your social media platforms. For example, if you have a bad guy who's doing recognizance and they already know how much, how many people are in your family, right? So they know a little bit of information about you. Now, if you go on social media and you say, I am super excited about my vacation to Ireland. Oh, it's going to be a week of us being in a beautiful country and exploring and going to see the Game of Thrones, set and things of that nature. You're conveying information. So if you haven't gone through any of the privacy settings that you have on social media, right, you are telling the public that you are not going to be home for a specific or a determined amount of time. That can cause issues for you. If you go on, let's say, Facebook, if you go through the security settings in Facebook actually can be a secure platform. You can actually restrict which of your friends can see your friends. So they have a lot of settings that you can go through to begin to lock down how much information you make available to a bad guy or someone who's looking to do you harm. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cyber threat. Let's say somebody is trying to stalk you, right? And if you are able to control the access that you give to the public, right, it'll help you stay secure. That is what I am trying to help you with. And not only that, right, if you change those security settings, it's time consuming, right, because you got to go through all of your platforms, but I promise you that it is going to help you be more secure, and you will stop those bad guys who actually go through, and people do this. People sit there and go through, let's say there's a data leakage and some information is published, on the dark web that you may not know about, right? And I've talked about some of those breaches in the past here at Pernick Cyber, where they had, a leakage that affected TurboTax and things of that nature. When they leak that on the dark web, right, folks can get their hands on that information. And if they have, at a minimum, your name and your profile isn't private, then they know who you are. They have your picture, right? And then they have information that you convey because you think that, innocently rather, that you are trying to talk to your family members or your friends and share experiences. And we're social creatures. We crave that. We want to do that, right? We want to share those experiences with our loved ones. And that's not a bad thing. What I am saying is that you should take the couple of minutes to secure your social media platforms to ensure that you stay, giving the information to those who you want to give that information to, right? That you make sure that you only supply that information to your loved ones and not somebody who's looking to do you harm. So please, if you take anything away from this particular topic today, make sure that you go through all of your social media settings and begin to lock down how much information you make public. And another one that my wife actually mentioned to me is, people are proud of their schools, right? They'll say, hey, I went to, John Jay College, or I went to Notre Dame, or I went to Michigan, or Michigan State, or, I'm a Florida State Seminole, right? You're conveying information because one of these, and I think it's a challenge with companies changing the security questions, but some of the questions that they ask are, what is your school mascot? You have now told them what your school is. A simple Google search will net them what the mascot is, and they will have one of a few of these, questions that recur, whenever they ask you for, security questions. Just be mindful of how much information you put out there. Ladies and gentlemen, that is today's episode. Do me a favor, if you can, drop me a follow on Twitter. And if you want, we can have a conversation around these topics. If you have any questions, by all means, shoot them over, and I'd be happy, to answer those questions and engage in a conversation and give you additional hints on how to help you secure yourselves. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a like, a comment, and please do consider subscribing so that we can give folks, information that they normally wouldn't have access to. Until next time, be vigilant.